Good Monday morning, everyone. Oh my goodness. The weather here in Texas is just, as you would expect, just crazy all around. My cat's going to pop into the screen. But you guys listening to Author Talk with me, Amy. Dina is our co-author, co-author host today. Valerie's with us, and our author guest is Daniel Grace. So you guys, let's dive into the weekend, shall we? So I'm not going to lie to you. So Daniel, I have a 5 and a 6-year-old. I have a kinder and a first grader. And I just was not feeling it on Friday, fully functioning at 6:30 in the morning. And so we had a girls' day. I let the girls stay home from school. We went and got our feet done and went shopping and just had a fun time because Saturday was full chaos. We had 2 birthday parties in between the rain, 2 hours apart, trying to just survive because now we're in like birthday season, I feel like, for everybody, and trying to plan my 6-year-old birthday, who wanted a 6-7 birthday because she's 6 going to be 7. But now I know, and now we've switched to Hello Kitty. And so I don't even know what's about to happen in that department. I have a field trip coming up on Thursday. Valerie, I don't know if you get up here very often, but over in Brenham is the Bluebell Creamery that we're going to go to. And there is a like roller rink called Silver Wings that my daughter's field trip is on. So we're going to go over there and skate and then go to Bluebell. So that's going to be a lot of fun on Thursday. So I'll post some pictures.
Wait, are you skating, Amy?
I mean, I'm going to try. I have a fear of falling, and I don't know why, because it's just probably going to happen. It's in my destiny to fall. Yeah. So, well, we'll see. If nothing else, I'll eat the ice cream for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah.
For me, there's nothing like Bluebell ice cream in the South. Like, that's just a staple.
It's free, Bluebell. It's free.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But what all did you guys do this weekend? Russell is currently living it for all of us on his cruise that he's on with his wife. So he'll be back next week. But what all did you guys do this weekend? Who wants to go first? Valerie, I saw some photos of your dog. Do you want to talk about what you did? That was so sweet. I loved it.
Yeah. My weekend was insane. I don't know what is wrong with me that I overbook myself, but you know what? I was just like living life to the fullest because I had 4 events this weekend, and that never happens. But I was like, if it is what it is. And then that rain in the middle, I mean, we're not talking like little rain. It was like scary rain, scary. So Saturday morning, me and Lily, my 11-year-old dog, we were invited to participate in the Wags and Whiskers fundraiser luncheon, and it's a fashion show for dogs to raise money for Animeals, which is like it's Meals on Wheels, but they give pet food to the owners. And so we did that, and she was Wonder Woman because the theme was superheroes, and that was it was hilarious because there was 14 dogs backstage, and the fur was like everywhere. It was just funny. But all the dogs were so good, and they all got along great. And then Saturday night we went to a gala supporting type 1 diabetes, and then Sunday this is a crazy. Okay, so it was the 12th annual author fair with Copperfield Books here down in Spring, and there was like 62 authors in this giant. Yeah, it was really great, and I was just so inspired by all the displays that the authors went to such great trouble to create and present. And there was panels like with historical fiction and just different things. It was, but the rain, it was so heavy, it was so loud. And anyway, we all survived. We all sold books. It was good. And then last night went to dinner and just had a cocktail because I was like, I need a cocktail tonight. And then I wake up this morning, and then you're gonna laugh. I'm looking out my office window, and we have a lot of feral cats in our neighborhood. It's a new thing. There's a mama with 4 kittens right outside my window, and I was like,
man,
goodness gracious! I was like, it's a Monday, guys. Let's go.
Fun times for you. Daniel, what about you? You have such a beautiful background. Tell us where you're at.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
But before I get into my weekend, I have to tell you, Amy, I think fondly back to those days of little people and having three daughters, hence the bald hair, who have all flown the nest. I look back at those days longingly of birthday parties and soccer tournaments and crazy
So much.
costumes. And so that speaks to my heart. But the grass is always greener, right? So yes, I'm actually speaking to you guys from Verona in Italy. I live primarily in Florence, right outside of Florence. So I'm in the wine business. I own a winery here in Tuscany, and from California originally, but I'm in Verona because I'm at an event called Vinitaly, which is sort of the biggest wine show of sort of the Italian wine calendar year. So big weekend, one leaning towards Italian wine.
Nice. That sounds like a
That sounds
good weekend.
perfect. I wish I was there.
Yeah, there's lots of wine to choose from. So you exactly
Yes.
be careful what you wish for.
That's okay. That's okay.
Dina, what about you? How was your fantastic weekend?
I did a little Tai Chi, did a little work, did a lot of eating.
Nice.
I'm trying to get everything ready. Wee Bossy has a root canal on Wednesday. So I will be I won't be working at all because, she'll be all goofy. I'm definitely going to record it because, I think I need a laugh. So, so I just work, what I do every weekend. I work. But I did finish an author's book. Yay. A children's book. So I'm done with that one.
Yep, I'm going to be looking it over today. It's on my calendar. But you guys, I have to fill in for Russell because Russell's not here, which means that he doesn't get to give me the look on what I say or how I say it. But we want to thank everyone who listens to us and tunes in and engages with us. We've been doing this for 10 years. We are top 10 on Good Pods in the indie book categories. We're top 1% in other categories. So you can find us anywhere that you can listen to a podcast. You can go over to Spotify, Good Pods. You can go to Amazon, iTunes, Google Play. If you want to watch us and engage with us, because we do go live in video format, you can go over to our YouTube channels, any one of our social media platforms, or our Facebook group. You can engage, ask us questions. We love engaging and answering your questions and just, communicating in real time. So you guys feel more than welcome to do that. And we don't have like Russell's sassiness today. He was so sassy last week, you guys. He told me to stay muted. Can you believe that? Oh my goodness. He is such a character. But with him not being here and Dina being on, so you guys know that this whole year, me and Russell have been on this. Well, not most. I know a lot about it. Mostly Russell's been on this like exploration of the romance genres and the differences between it. And so Dina's on it, but I have picked up a new book, you guys, and I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it. So I need feedback in it and just how you guys got into, if you have read it or like just in the types of genres. So me and my husband were having a conversation last night. He was trying to talk to me about, authorship and writing and genres, which I just thought was kind of funny because he was trying to tell me I was wrong in a lot of things. And we've all done this for so long, right? And
he told you were wrong, Amy?
I know. I can't believe it.
But a brave man.
Yes.
He quickly regretted that for sure. But okay, so my story on how I rabbit hole darker into a genre, and I want to know if this has happened to any of you guys. I started reading, and Dina, your book's going to come up, but it's later. But the reason is I started reading L.J. Sheen's Freedom Fracture book, and then I went through Corrupted Chaos. I went through her whole series that she has written, and it like introduced me to romance in more of like an action setting, with some mild like triggers, I guess, to it. But then, because we were talking about books that we just can't forget, right? And I talked about reading as an addiction, as you're always trying to get, when you introduce a new book or a new genre, you have like that, oh my gosh, this is the best book. I need more of it. So you kind of go further down into the genre hole, right? Of I want to have that fix again. And so Dina's book introduced me to just a lot of stuff. And so for me, I guess I kept going further down the dark romance hole to like fill that void of like that first time read that you get. And so I want to know, and it doesn't have to be romance related. That's just my current like venture that I'm on. What book was that for you guys? Like before we dive into you, Daniel, and your books and your writing, I want to kind of know what kicked it off. But what was that like one fantastic book that you read that you just can never, you know, nothing compares to that book? Do you guys have one? I know we all have to think. I like
I have so many. I have
Exactly.
so many
It's
that have just stuck for years, decades. I have books that have stuck in my head for decades.
Yeah. Daniel, what were you going to say?
Well, for me, even as a teenager, the author that sort of redefined what a genre can be, which has nothing to do with my book, was as an author was Michael Crichton, and just that way on coming from a mind that was sort of intimidated by science, the fact that you could make science so exhilarating, and not only that, and I think it kind of plays a role in historical fiction, that you can take it down this sort of fabulously fictitious route. I thought just opened the doors of possibility for me.
Yeah. See, I could get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah. Who was it? Robin Cook that originally came up with like the medical thrillers,
right,
like in the 70s and the 80s. See, look, I'm so dating myself, right? So, but what about you, Valerie?
I was just thinking like, my brother and I, we were like furious readers because we took a lot of road trips as kids. So my mom would take us to Walden Books and we'd get like loaded up. But so my brother and I would like swap each other. But I think that's when it really kicked off my love for horror. Because we were just Clive Barker just like blew my mind back in the day. And then you were like, wait, I want to read them like older Stephen King. I want to read this. And then you just, because it's not like the movies. When you read it, it's creepy. It's creepy as hell. And you're just like, you can feel like the little goosebumps come up. But
yeah.
And I wouldn't say like not recently, but I think Gillian Flynn, when she came out with Gone Girl, even not that long ago, and then that inspired me to really like step back up into thrillers. I had been, because you kind of like jump from genre to genre, but then when Gone Girl came out and I read that, and then it made me like go back into all of her books, which are all like, on the edge. And then you go to Ruth Ware and just different thrillers. I don't know. I guess I'm just a thrill junkie now.
I like it.
Yeah, well, watching Bosch on Amazon made me go and read all of the Bosch books, right?
Yeah,
so like
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
And just to add, just to validate your point about Stephen King, obviously the master, but in terms of to make horror so compassionate and so heartwarming, and just sort of the deep nurtured relationships that, again, kind of who knew that, once you get into and name a Stephen King book, and there's a sweetness inherent to all of them that just, to me, that sort of softer side of horror that makes the horror that much more tremendous is, again, as a teenager, to me, that was, oh my God, that's so beautiful and frightening at the same time. And that's the tension.
And I think, for him, even like building the level of suspense with the creepiness, the older books, his newer ones, I haven't been a fan of as much, but the older ones how many times can you watch the Shining movie and still be creeped out? But I promise you read that book, it's like, whoa.
No,
it's different. It's a different, mindset.
Those echoes of the book every time you close it at night. And it's just, that's not something you get from a movie.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, don't read it alone.
You guys answer. I feel so seen and heard by you guys. You guys are my people. Because like I was trying to have this conversation last night and it was not going the same way. Like here, I'm like, oh, this is great. You guys all understand my addiction to reading, right? Which is, I don't know. I think it's a nice, it's a nice addiction.
Amy, how many books are you reading right now? Because
God,
I'm bad. I'm bad right now.
I'm terrible. I think I'm reading, like currently I'm reading 3 and I'm listening to 2 because I kind of bounce back and forth on them.
Yes. Yeah.
But I have started. So the whole point of this conversation I was having with Josh is I really liked the spray painted edges and the nice designs. And the books that I've read that have that, I want to go and get because I want to get another bookshelf and I want to put all my pretty books on it, you know? And so that was the whole like kind of sparked this whole conversation. And then he was thinking about writing a book and I was trying to borderline, you know, I know what goes into it. So I'm kind of borderline trying to be like, I don't know if we need to do that right now, but sure, let's talk about it kind of thing. But I did discover, and I don't know if maybe it might just be a new to me kind of thing, but everybody on here knows that I have an addiction to app-based or web-based novels. I like to read them. I know it sounds silly, but I like to read scene by scene. It's just I don't know. That's how I can bounce between so many stories while reading, you know, Kindle books and stuff. But there is a new one, and it's called We Hear, and I couldn't figure out what it was. It took me a hot minute. It is audio clips of a book. So you can't read the book. You have to listen to it scene by scene, and they release, you know, 3 at a time kind of thing. And again, so now I have a new fixation. I might just need help. I don't know if there's like a reader's anonymous addiction thing. I don't know, but because now I have all these apps on my phone. I'm listening to those stories. I'm trying to finish the JD Robb series that me and Dina started. I don't even know how many years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get through like those 26 books or whatever. I'm still trying to get through all of those. But I have a lot of clients' books that I'm currently reading. Their launch days are coming up, so I'm rereading them to give them, you know, reviews and stuff when their books come out. So I'm rereading a lot of those. But yeah, I'm currently reading for fun. It's something Bishop. I don't remember. It's my LG Sheen who I love. It's something Bishop, but I have to take a break because it's pretty dark. So I have like fillers. But speaking of writers and new adventures and new journeys, because we love to hear about it, Valerie, Dina, let's get Daniel talking about his work, his journey towards becoming an author, and what that looked like and what that pivotal moment was that made him want to write a book. So you guys take it away.
Okay, I know from reading your, you know, standard bio that you started out in advertising, international advertising. So
don't hate me for it.
You went from advertising to winemaking to fiction. What part of that journey actually makes you a better storyteller?
So, you know, and it's not a BS answer. You know, it's all mythology, right? And I'm someone who, you know, is sort of has theater in his roots and has been a sort of a hobby writer all my life, and I translated that into advertising, and to be honest, sort of the hardest prose one can write is that sort of that 3 or 4 word headline to try and sell financial services or insurance services or data management. You know, it's easy to sell beer, right, and tennis shoes. So if anything, even though it's sort of surprising, even things like pharmaceutical advertising, which I was pretty knee deep in for a while, you know, that you cut your teeth on trying to create, you know, rheumatoid arthritis drugs sort of sound sexy or interesting or emotional, which you have to do. I think it taught me more than I thought. And then when I had the opportunity to transition into the wine space, you know, wine is at its core. It's all mythology, right? It's about sort of capturing this moment of time, and every bottle is an echo of a time gone by, and the people and the blood, the sweat, the tears, the hope, the harmony that goes into it. So oddly enough, kind of taking that magical leap to sit down and be like, hey, I think I've got a story to tell. From a writing perspective, I felt that the muscle was at least pretty lean. And so sort of it was a surprisingly kind of fluid process. It sounds more chaotic, but I appreciate, I think, some of the writing that I was forced to do for certainly some sort of dry, complicated spaces, I think has made this process more invigorating.
Well, how do you decide where history ends and where interpretation begins?
So love the question. So, I have the opportunity to kind of own and toil a vineyard that has a 2,000-year-old Etruscan road that splits the property. It's a vineyard that was first planted by Franciscan monks. And so I have this playground where history plays such a pivotal role. And with that, crafting the story about wine and otherwise, you sort of have the opportunity to kind of romanticize the history, right? That's kind of the business I'm in, right? Is sort of the charm. I tell people I'm in the transportation business, right? Because a bottle of wine takes you to a magical place and a magical moment. And so history, I learned, especially when it came to wine, was something, it's an ally, and it's sort of not two-dimensional. And to me, there was an opportunity there that you can get playful with history, you can get serious, you can get bloody with history. It's not this sort of strict two-dimensional narrative that I think I grew up believing. And there are certainly books, and I think we all have in our history, these sort of eye-opening books that sort of play with history and beyond even historical fiction, just sort of shake it up and put it in the Cuisinart. And I love the fact that, again, history it's not linear, especially when you get into fiction. This fact that, it's not, no pun intended, history is not gospel. And so, I'm not talking about predicting the future. So who cares what I have to say about history? But if it's interesting and it can tell a different side of a historical story, why not?
Okay, does living on the winery, does it give you more of a, connection with how long or how broad history is?
My goodness, it does, absolutely. So it sounds ridiculous and dramatic, but I'm acutely aware that, I'm sort of this temporary steward of the land for this tiny, tiny, tiny moment in time. And so there's a responsibility from a sort of a land stewardship to return the land in better shape than you found it, and all that kind of farming stuff. But that sense of just being this blip, and you're sort of, again, you're you're looking out on a landscape that literally to the tree hasn't changed in 500, 1,000, 2,000 years. It's this incredibly humbling reminder of, mark your moment, but be careful with it, but also do it with joy, right? Because it's a blink of the eye.
How minuscule our life expectancy is compared to Earth time.
Exactly. I mean, and again, not to speak too much about the wine, but truly to me, it's the only living organic time vessel. And so I believe in time travel, right? It's in every bottle of wine, and it's unique to wine, and maybe some like an aged spirit. But to me, you're telling a story, not just of the climate and the earth, but of the people of a moment gone by, like a book. And so to me, as silly as it sounds, time travel is tangible and it's real, and it's, again, that's kind of eye-opening too. This fact that, you can kind of play with this non-linear storytelling. And I think that's so long answer to your original question. Absolutely. Not only sort of being on this landscape has inspired me, but I think it's taught me that there are no rules when it comes to, the passage of time and the yesterdays and the tomorrows.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Heady stuff. I know it's morning your time, so we probably haven't had enough coffee yet. So we'll have to talk about this over a glass of wine when you get into evening hours.
Well, what do you want readers arguing about after they finish your book?
So,
like if Amy and I read not a lot of the same stuff because she's crazy, but if Amy and I were to read your book, what would you want us to argue about?
I would want you to argue a few different things. I think the fundamental argument I would love to suggest is, again, it's sort of based on the concept of history is written by the victors, right? And if you take a biblical tale, it's very specific, and there's a narrative that's convenient. And so to me, there's an opportunity to sort of retell a tale of characters that we thought we knew. And so the argument, and we can get into the book in a minute if you guys like, but the argument it's sort of challenging the Mandela effect around what we think we know about these iconic moments in history and sort of these iconic characters that enabled these moments. And the argument should be it's okay to question motivations, intent, and even history without rewriting it and without telling anyone else how it might impact their beliefs or faiths or philosophy, but just argue about the fact that you can have a debate about historical context.
Sure.
Yeah. I get that.
And what color to paint the new bookshelf. So that's a different argument.
Yes.
It'll be white. Okay, when you're working with historical and philosophical material, do you start with the narrative first, or do you want your ideas to explore and build the story around them?
So just quickly, let me give you the sort of 30-second perspective of what the book's about, so it kind of makes sense. So this book, in the way
you've done that, right?
Right.
The book title.
Right. People are like, what the hell are these guys talking about? So the book, In the Wake of Golgotha. Golgotha is it is probably the most infamous plot of Mound Earth. It's a 1,600-foot hill outside ancient Jerusalem's walls, wherein at the base of it lies the Garden of Gethsemane, and up the Via Dolorosa, up towards the Calvary Hill to the Plateau of Skulls. Golgotha is where Christ was crucified. And so this small hill is potentially the most pivotal and fought and conflict over plot on earth. And so this tale is not a story of necessarily Christ's crucifixion. It's a story of who enabled it. And it's a question of who still remains in the shadow of that cross. And so what I wanted to do was examine these two historical characters of Pontius Pilate and Judas Iscariot, and sort of question their eternal damnation, right? If you think about history and you think about not only biblical characters, but mythological characters and literary characters, you'd be hard pressed to come up with two other characters that have been so extremely, for lack of a better word, lynched by history and by culture and by religion. And I just became curious and fascinated, bless you, as to why, and why these two characters became these sort of abstract adjectives and these sort of violent, villainous verbs, and whose narrative has just become, to me, this kind of a convenient narrative that's pretty two-dimensional. And so I wanted to sort of retell their tale in a contemporary setting in modern day New York through a series of incarnations, just to sort of question their own curse, their own choice, and their own damnation. So that's sort of the setup. And so to answer your question, the first step was that, okay, if this is, you talk about crucifixion, it's even though at the time it was a very sort of commonplace method of capital execution, it's a term today that's pretty taboo, right? It for most people, it sort of stings the soul, and it rarely escapes the mind, yet alone the mouth. And yet, for billions and billions of souls who have worn crucifixes dangling near to their heart, I think oftentimes sort of the act, the sacrifice, and those responsible, we sort of gloss over their context. And so the first step was to kind of dig into that research in a way that says, look, I'm not looking to challenge kind of biblical narrative on what happened atop Golgotha. And so what was fascinating, getting back to that Mandela effect, was how little we actually know about Judas Iscariot and Pontius Pilate, and what drove, for instance, in Judas's case, his rage and his strength, and for Pilate, what drove his weakness and ambition. And so there's an opportunity historically it was a little bit of a blank canvas. And so there was an opportunity to deconstruct, I think, what I thought, and I might suggest what we all think we know about this pivotal chapter when it comes to these two characters. And so first step was actually a exhilarating relief, because there was an opportunity to kind of sort of play with their context and what drove them to the hill and what happened to them in the aftermath.
And as someone who is not religious, religion doesn't play a large part in their day-to-day life, would they find this book an interesting read? Is it really religion based at all, other than the characters?
That's a good question. And so, the intent was absolutely, this was not going to be a biblical retelling. This is not a religious book. This is not sort of Christian fiction by any means. To me, this is a story of the guilt, the pain, the sorrow, the hope, the hopelessness, and the fear that we all take up our own hills. And whether it's in this lifetime, the next, or the past. And these two characters, I think there's an opportunity for them to be these sort of vessels to tell this story. But the intent in kind of crafting this tale in modern day New York, at this intersection of violence and murder and capital addiction and capital punishment and opioid addiction, is this sort of this gritty telling of the complexities of the world that we live in today, right? And so not only does every mythology and every religion ultimately starts with a painful journey uphill that's met with a very violent moment, right? This is a universal phenomenon with every tale of Greek and Roman mythology and most religions. And again, it's about crime, sentence, and judgment. And it's how we pass through these hurdles of crime, sentence, and judgment, and how we impose these sentences upon ourselves and each other, that really this is what this tale is about.
Do you believe history gets guilt and justice right?
No, I don't. And I think, again, it's the adage I mentioned at the outset that history is written by the victors. And so, that whether it's that judgment or that sentence, I mean, the first line that I wrote in this book, that's not the first line of the book, but it carries a significant weight throughout the book, is sort of this moment where Judas exclaims to Pilate in this initial encounter. There sort of whispers back to what happened 2,000 years ago. And he sort of expresses the sentiment of, there is no crime to fit this sentence. And Pilate responds with, there is no sentence to fit this crime. And so there is just this cycle of judgment and guilt that history actually has a way of recasting. And if you look at how religion in many ways is captured through art, and you can look at the Renaissance, it's incredibly narrow. That there's a very specific narrative when it comes to artistic expressions of, again, such pivotal moments. And I found that fascinating too, because again, there's a lot that we question historically speaking, and we do it now as sort of 21st century Americans. We do it in Europe, but when it comes to religion, there's and this is coming from a place, I'm a practicing Catholic, but I think there's an unhealthy lack of kind of questioning that same history. And so to me, I found it faith affirming to question why, for instance, these two characters were so damned. And yet, this event was written to fulfill the scriptures. It doesn't make any sense that these two characters should be cursed to the extent that they are. So to me, biblical history is fair game. That doesn't mean I'm want to tear it down by any means. If to me, it humanize it by looking at, you talk about sacrifice and you talk about pain. You look at what these sort of periphery characters went through to enable the rise. A lot of people fell to enable that rise, and I find that just interesting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like we got so serious all of a sudden. So
So, well, I mean, it's not like your book is not a serious subject matter. So I guess I want to know when you said that, when you started writing, you said that was the first line you wrote, which I saw that on the book description. I thought, oh my God, that's a great line. But did you know what you wanted the story to be? I mean, are you a Potzer? a plotzer or I'm gonna figure out how to say
Are
this
you
word.
a
plotzer or a
pantser?
pantser.
Yeah, there you go.
I got it. So
Yes,
Yeah.
that's it.
or a
No,
mix of both.
I'm the worst. I'm the world's worst planner, and I find that when I have, and I think this is anything in my life, if I have a too strong of a sense of where I need to be, I'll never get there. And so, to me, I knew I wanted to start with a question, and again, not to sound silly, but I didn't start with the answer, and in many ways, I didn't know where it was going. And as I dug deeper into this history and continued to find nothing, it opened up my passage to retell the story, in sort of present day. So no, this was pretty blind driving, because I kind of wanted to explore these characters, their own sort of timeless tumble through history, kind of in real time, which I think for many writers would drive them bananas. Like, what do you mean you had no idea where they're going? But I actually found some joy in that, because I'm putting myself in not these dead man's shoes, but these sort of incarnated damned characters, and I wanted to experience sort of their dawning realization, the guilt of their actions, and kind of stumble in the dark.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel was your challenge developing these characters in the present day?
I think it was the biggest challenge was to give it context. And so what I tried to do in telling sort of this contemporary tale was, again, these glances back and have the opportunity to kind of fabricate a background and a childhood and a family dynamic for Pontius Pilate and his a childhood bout with smallpox, and how that in fact impacted his shortness of breath and a stutter, and so the challenges again goes back to that blank canvas, which was fun, but it was tricky to give these characters these believable sort of flaws, if you will, that could present themselves in present day. So in sort of the present day incarnation of the Pontius Pilate character, he's sort of a corporate lawyer. He's put in this ironic position to actually defend a man who was crucified through 3 innocent people in modern day New York. So just the irony of the juxtaposition of, as opposed to persecuting a man to sentence on a cross, he was defending a man who was heading to death row. And then as well with Judas, sort of these moments of doubt and guilt, because he is aware of his past and how he carries that lifetime after lifetime, and through his own strange inclinations of self-harm to kind of tease his own control in a way that's sort of believable in the modern world. So that was a challenge, but I again, and even in crafting, I think some of the very darker moments and some of the darker nuances that can get kind of bloody and weird, there was sort of a joy in that, because, kind of going back to early conversation about with Stephen King, that, to capture, again, there's a soul in each of these characters. And so just to sort of find where their soft parts are was a challenge, but, it was fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous.
Yes.
So you got another question,
Valerie, do you have any questions, like last minute questions?
Yeah, because I noticed our time was something, but yeah. So I know it mentioned that you began your writing journey in Ireland. Can you tell us what prompted that? Because was there a turning point in your life, or what happened? Did you discover some research or what?
So I had the opportunity as a former actor to perform at the National Theatre in Dublin, and I became an obsessive student of Samuel Beckett. So very quickly I was performing in Waiting for Godot, and I became, again, equally obsessed with sort of the ego and id nature of Waiting for Godot. And to me, it was this aha moment. And then when I started looking at biblical tales and mythology, but also comic books, and I was not necessarily some who, kind of consumed a lot of comic books. But I was struck by, again, kind of this ego and id nature of comic book heroes and anti-heroes. And then as, looking back at the end of the last century, we're in this moment of kind of the death of legend, where, these heroes and anti-heroes from biblical times, from Greek and Roman mythology to Shakespeare to, modern, or I should say sort of classic American literature, but also superheroes, these characters, these heroes, these anti-heroes, they were our moral compass. And as we came into the digital age, they became irrelevant. And so actually the genesis of the book started with this examination of this death of legend. And it was actually a wake. And it was this cast of characters, both heroes and anti-heroes, attending this wake of heroism. And one of the characters was this Judas Iscariot character. And so to me, there's a very subtle subtext that, all of a sudden that same Waiting for Godot, superhero, anti-hero, ego and id tale, all of a sudden I started reflecting on the biblical, again, kind of parallel passage downhill of both Judas and Pilate and the balance of strength and weakness. To me, all of a sudden it was an aha moment of, is this another tale of the ego and the id, right? And so that then informed me, of course, this is an allegory. And yet we've somehow taken everything so literally in this chapter that, and again, cast our collective cultural spell on these two characters, when to me, this is clearly a tale of, this is Godot. This is the same sides of the same soul, just as there are two sides to every story. So to me, again, it was like this beautiful, oh my God, like I get it. And again, without casting judgment on biblical belief, this just made it more interesting to me. I was like, this is good writing, as opposed to, okay, this couldn't have happened.
Does your story give your characters a chance to maybe redeem themselves? Or I don't want to spoiler alert, but are they going to still keep being just
that's the whole point of the book,
having a bad conscience,
Yeah, the whole point of the book is there's these various characters that enables this intersection, right? In contemporary New York City, at this sort of this dark leaning, fairly violent intersection where these two characters can come together and have this reckoning. So kind of the whole point of this book is they're tumbled down the hill and they're sort of turned to face each other and have this moment of truth. And that's ultimately the sort of the culmination of the story. And what do they do with that? And kind of, it's also a tale of self-determination and kind of recognizing potentially, were they fated? Did they have a choice? And sort of seeing the iteration of guilt and condemnation only through sort of seeing it in each other could potentially sort of release them from their chains.
That sounds tough. I'm sure that took a lot of planning on getting that storyline the way you liked it, right?
Well, get into it and let me know what you think. See if
and the editing process for that. Oh my goodness. Was that tough for you as well?
So the editing process was amazing. So when I knew, it's a complicated story. I knew I needed help. And when I found the right publisher, which is Kohler Books, and Becky Hilliker was the editor, she was amazing. And they gave me the best life advice I'd ever gotten that happened to be great sort of authorship advice. And I think they recognized, like, hey, there's an amazing story here. And sort of the advice they gave me was, take yourself out of the story and stop trying to impress people with your story. Just tell it. And so sort of the redrafting through the lens of extracting myself and perhaps trying to be a little bit clever in the nuances of and the historical relationship between religion and the law and capital punishment, and just tell, this is a freaking fascinating story. It was great advice, and it was liberating, that sense of it, apart from the initial taking the sword out of my chest when they were like, well, who are you trying to impress? And it was a great question because I think I was. And so that process of the editing was amazing. And so then when it came into editing the drafts, it was just like, yep, and great. Hey, let's explore this. And you hear these nightmare stories, especially with sort of first time authors, that, oh my God, like, you know, the 12 round heavyweight boxing fight that is the editing process. I was just like, this is incredible. It was like everything I could have ever imagined. So that part was amazing. So I generally finished the biggest smile on my face.
Yeah, it sounds like a rebirth almost. Yeah.
No, literally a rebirth. And I'll forever be grateful for that. I mean, regardless of where the book ended, where it goes, there's, to me, no question it was so infinitely better because of that guidance and the advice and the crutches that they gave me to get through it.
Yeah, finding the true story that you intended for the readers.
Right, and I was getting in the way of it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Daniel, where can people find you, and where can they find and learn more about your book?
Sure. So, so probably Instagram at Daniel Mark Grace. I have a website, danielmarkgrace.com, but Instagram's a good place. The book is widely available. Obviously Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the sites you might look to find it. The audiobook was just released. So, on Audible and on, you know, all of that, Apple Play and Spotify. And so that's a fun part of the journey too.
Nice. Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for taking time out of your midday over in Italy. One, to bring us a gorgeous background, but two, just so we could pick your mind about your book and how it kind of came to fruition and what it's about, and just kind of have this fun conversation. So thanks for making time to hang out with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, you guys. It was really fun. And I love the pink, I think it's pink, I'm colorblind, but the flamingo behind you. So that's made my day happy.
Everything's pink behind.
Okay, good. I can never, you know, I never know.
I get it. My dad's colorblind. He can't see red or green. So I totally understand.
It gets complicated. I stopped wearing ties because I just embarrass myself.
I totally get it. I understand 100%. Well, everybody, we hope that you all have a fantastic Monday, a great rest of your week. And until next Monday, bye for now, everybody.